Strap in, folks, because we're diving deep into the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories surrounding the total solar eclipse on April 8th. It's like the universe cosmic spectacular meets a Hollywood blockbuster plot, with every imaginable wild theory thrown into the mix. Infidel 64 has the story. Infidel?
Oh, as you said, welcome to the realm of the unhinged. The solar eclipse isn't just a mesmerizing astronomical event, but this is the ultimate canvas for conspiracy theorists to paint their wildest fantasies. From a Masonic plot of rituals to allow the NWO to take over, to red cattle from Texas and Israel for bringing back sacrificing animals at the temple. This is a grab bag of lunacy. From rockets to particle accelerators, everything's been thrown into the mix of this patternicity to create the most fantastical tales of absurdity. Of course, most have video and evidence to prove their case. Just as the moon momentarily eclipses the sun, watch far-right extremists eclipse reason. And the story we're talking about comes from Wired. It's by David Gilbert on April 5th, 2024.
So there's a laundry list, as you just mentioned, Infidel, of coincidental events happening on the same day, from the firing up of the Large Hadron Collider to the launch of NASA's satellites. It's like conspiracy theorists' dream come true. I meant to say dream come true, with every event being twisted into the fit of the narrative from impeding doom. So I know that you kind of dived a little bit more into, certain examples of conspiracy theories that were actually espoused. Tell us a little bit more about that, Infidel.
Well, they talked about it passed over Bill Clinton and Mike Pence's house and JFK assassination, Waco, all these different things. But really, it's just a matter of, as one of them put, there are many indications that this is the start of something big. No, if you cover enough area, you're going to cross places where things happen. That's not exactly something supernatural, but it really is odd how a lot of these people, and this was a UK dyed in the wool conspiracy theorist, so I'm going to do him a little injustice by thinking more of a slightly different accent, but there's a hell of a lot of coincidences right here. I mean, come on, be serious. But really, the one that I found very concerning was about Israel bringing back the sacrifice at the temple with the red heifers, because there are people that believe that this actually has to happen for the end of the world to occur. They think these sacrifices have to be resumed and the third temple rebuilt. So when these people start talking about things like this, it concerns me, because we need to be reminded that these are people who don't just think the end of the world is a possibility, but they want the end of the world to come about. And that's very concerning.
Yes, it is.
It is. Jason, why don't you talk a little bit more on your thoughts concerning that?
Oh, man. Well, okay. So, I'm in Texas. And what's really interesting is the day before I recorded up at the ACA library. And it's great because Infidel was there, and, I was there with Jamie and all of our friends. And so I made sure to get the fuck out of there as quick as possible, because I knew what was happening, because the next day, everybody was kind of coming to that area, because right around San Antonio, San Marcos, there was the path of totality where you could see the full coverage of the moon. And it's wild because, I'm driving out and there's a line exiting San Marcos that was just ridiculous. The freeway was stopped because of it, everything. So being in a very conservative state like Texas, a couple of us here understand, I guess your brain is getting saturated with this type of talking and speak and rhetoric. And especially working in the industry that I work in oil and gas, you have a primarily conservative group of people who work in that industry. So I heard a lot of this stuff, and it was really disconcerting. And what it really, if I have a second, I put something in my notes, and what it reminded me of was an article that I'd found when I was finishing up my psychology degree, that I used to discuss difficulties that we deal with in this world due to people adhering to fundamentalist religion. Now, the article it's called, well, it was in the Journal of Applied Research in Memory and Cognition. It was published to 2019. Yeah. And it's called The Belief in Fake News is Associated with Delusionality, Dogmatism, Religious Fundamentalism, and Reduced Analytic Thinking. It was Bronstein et al. Now, it was two studies with over 900 participants. And they're saying that it demonstrated that although like delusion-prone individuals were no more likely to believe true news headlines, they displayed an increased belief in fake news headlines, which often feature implausible content. Mediation analyses suggest that analytic cognitive style may partially explain these individuals' increased willingness to believe fake news. Exploratory analyses showed that dogmatic individuals and religious fundamentalists were also more likely to believe false but not true news, and these relationships may be fully explained by analytic cognitive style. Our findings suggest that existing interventions that increase analytic and actively open-minded thinking might be leveraged to help reduce belief in fake news. So the way to translate that is if people learn how to employ skepticism, which is I know all four of us are all about, then it helps combat that tendency to believe in fake news. And the thing that really stood out to me is that they conclusively found in both studies that being part, not just religious, because that's its own thing, but being part of a fundamentalist group, which is what we see here in the South, and especially those espousing these ideas, makes you prone to believe fake news and not real news, which is really interesting to me. The not real really stood out to me. So that's what I wanted to add to this, Cynthia. And I have other articles and other studies that support these notions of religious fundamentalist people being prone to what they call being delusion prone, which is, in a sense, you're willing to believe in something with evidence to the contrary. So that's why religion isn't a delusion, but some of the results of fundamentalist thinking are delusion, because you can show somebody that this is not the case and they still cling to it like they cling to their own identity. So right. Back to you, Cynthia.
Well, thank you, Jason. Yeah, I kind of want to explore this whole notion about a proclivity to being delusion prone. And our other resident student of psychology would be Miss Helen Green, also on the panel as well. And I think that you wrote a little bit about belief plus mental illness equals bad outcomes. What did you mean by that?
It's because we tend to, even people that have very held close beliefs still think they're coming from a rational place, because the magical thinking feeds into it. So, for example, if you think the eclipse and goes along a certain path and the previous eclipse goes on another path and it forms a pattern, and this pattern leads to, Jesus signaling something, or the devil signaling something, or the world government signaling something. To you, it seems rational because you're putting the pattern together. It doesn't hold any sort of objectivity to it, but so you already have that thinking going, okay? And then on top of that, because of this, you think you're correct, because the one thing also, and we do this all the time, even people that are skeptics and biased, is that we follow the thing that makes us feel good rather than what is correct. But the thing is, though, is that if you don't have that rational thought and objectivity to kind of pull you back from that, you'll just follow the thing that makes you feel good. And the patterns constantly confirm what you think that belief is. It's going to lead to bad outcomes because you're not living in the real world. You're not living in the world of rationality. You're not living in the world of, this makes me feel good, but is it true? The thing that's making me feel good, the thing that's feeding that dopamine dump, that's feeding my belief system, that's feeding the eclipse is here, and you get all these influencers online, confirming, confirming your bad ideas, because bad ideas don't exist in a vacuum. And it can lead to those bad ideas leading into bad behavior. Glenn, I know you're going to talk about this, the article that you had posted about those ideas leading to some very, very tragic outcomes. So even though we, like I make fun of weird conspiracy theories because I love me a conspiracy theory. I think that the way that people think and the stuff they come up with is entertaining. But I like it as entertainment. Like I will like Ancient Aliens as entertainment. I don't want anyone to think that these ideas can get so extreme that it causes actual harm. But unfortunately, we see over and over again with bad ideas and bad beliefs that it can lead to actions that cause real harm to other people. And for, we know people that are, that have bad ideas, and I call them functional delusionals. They're able to hold down a job. They're able to take care of their families. They're able to do all the things, but they just have they think lizard people are real. Okay. All right. I don't think you should think that way, but it's relatively harmless if you're not hurting anybody. But the thing is, though, is that where that line is and where the bad belief feeds into mental illness, and if you're not getting proper treatment for that, it can lead to bad outcomes. And that's the thing that I find so disconcerting when we're talking about things like the eclipse, because it exasperates the people that are dealing with those issues, and it kind of aligns, for lack of a better word, for those tendencies for those bad ideas to become action, get amplified, and that's the thing that's so disconcerting.
Well, I want to explore that whole issue concerning like bad outcomes, and you actually, and it was also indicated, Infidel, that you found a story about how this whole issue with I believe it was a astrologer influencer that
Yes.
that fatally stabbed a partner because of this particular event. Talk about that a little bit more.
I almost feel like that Jason and Helen set me up for this perfectly, because he talked about the tendency to fall for bad ideas in a fundamentalist group. And then Helen talking about the mental illness aspect. And, I'm not going to go into the fact that we have a woefully inadequate mental illness program as far as taking care of people who have real problems, because that's a whole issue in itself that really plays into this as well. I'm glad Helen mentioned it. But, this woman, she was an influencer, as you mentioned, an astrologer. She had made some sort of name for herself, whatever that means in that world. And, I found it interesting because on April 5th, she posted, wake up, the apocalypse is here. Everyone who has ears, listen. Your time to choose what you believe is now. And I hear so much Christian rhetoric, let he that hath ear, let him hear. I hear that rhetoric almost echoing out of this woman who obviously has some problems because she stabbed her partner, as you mentioned, and she got her child into the vehicle, her two children, and threw them out on the interstate, and the
Jesus
8-month-old daughter died. So, there are real problems. Yes, and these are the real ramifications of people believing bad things. And of course, once again, to that mental health crisis we have in this country that we're not paying attention to. But this is why it's so bad and so dangerous, because as Helen mentioned, there are functional people who, they believe things, but does it really make a difference? Does it really change certain things? No, not really. It doesn't. But when it comes down to this is people being fed a rhetoric, a diet of danger, of threat. And so what we have is this woman who obviously felt some real concerns, obviously not real issues external from herself. And the price is paid by a family that's lost an 8-month-old little girl because of fear and a market that is driven money, politics, and control by fear. And so fear costs this 8-month-old their life through their mom, who could have really used some help, but we're not really set up for that kind of thing anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the horrible part about it. I mean, like all of us can mention about how we can laugh and joke about these wild conspiracy theories, but the possibility of or more serious implications definitely are in the fray. As you mentioned, Infidel with this influencer who ended up stabbing her partner, there, the baby actually losing its life, and here we are, right? And one of the other things that, was a thing that was on April 8th or pre-April 8th were far-right extremists using this celestial event to push their agenda of government control with warnings of potential disruptions in cell coverage and electrical outages, and some are even convinced that this was just a smoke screen for a power grab. I kind of want to get the panel's thoughts about that in particular, on how, like, some of these different people who will look at a perfectly natural phenomenon and then equivocate it to this particular far-reaching issue concerning power grabs and electrical outages and etc. I start with Helen, then Infidel, and then Jason, please.
Okay. So, I don't think when we're talking about people that believe that this is connected to some kind of wider, thing that's going on, I think this is just, again, even when we're talking about, like, people that have mental illness, it's still looking for that pattern. And also, when people want to believe that, that political control and power comes from an outside source. It's not, the systems and, cults of personality and all the things that we know help the role of politics as it does do. They contribute to something that has to be outside of it. And I think that it's right for people to take advantage of those things. And we know that's happened. QAnon comes to mind, and which was something that started as a conspiracy, but then when a certain someone saw where the wind was blowing, took up the banner and was like, yeah, this is helping me. And when we're talking about something like, an eclipse or a natural phenomenon, that we know how it works, like we all know how this works, but they still have to contribute some kind of like divine intervention to show that, like, you're a particular person that you really, really, really like and really, really want to have power. It's a beckoning or harrowing of them, like, gaining that power, or the opposite, where it's a warning. And don't vote for that person, or that person, is part of something that's really, really bad. And it feeds into that whole. It's not separate from religious belief. It's still politics. Religion is politics, and politics is religion. It's all the same thing. Is that I'm going to use something that is a perfectly natural phenomenon. And it's really cool, but if I give it a certain spin, if I give it a certain meaning, then now I can influence my opinion into the wider zeitgeist, and it's annoying. Because this is just an eclipse. It was really cool. I didn't get to see it, except for on the internet, because I wasn't in the viewing place. But it's cool. But it just frustrates me that people use celestial normal events to bring about any sort of religious or political spice to a narrative. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I've got to say that while I was in the area, unfortunately, cloud cover took care of that concern. So in 2017, we went to Nebraska for it, and that was really cool, but we missed the one close by. So But I have to say that when people start talking about patterns, and I think you're right, Helen. There's a need to see patterns and that expectation. There are textured tiles in my bathroom that I could tell you 30 things that I see images of all the time, because that's what our brains do. We see patterns, and so it doesn't take much. But I think that right now what we're seeing is something a little different, because we have people who have a desire to create this constant back and forth. It's not about truth. It's not about being right. It's about constantly pointing fingers, keeping it all churning, just stirring the pot, keeping it going, because they breed off of that dissatisfaction. They breed off of that frustration that they continue to feed. So it doesn't matter if what you're feeding it is cotton candy or actually something of substance. It's still going to feed the frustration, and that's what they want.
Now, so what really stands out to me, what all this stuff makes me think of, is social conditioning. If you look at the predominant kitty tail, if you look at the predominant belief, especially where I live in the South, where a lot of us here live in the South, it's Christianity, and it's a certain flavor of Christianity that accepts the apocalypse as true. So what's happening is that, so Cynthia you mentioned things like war and bad shit happening and people rising to power and stuff. And yeah, I remember Y2K. I remember it very clear. I was old enough to party at that age. And I just remember everyone telling me shit was going to happen, all this stuff. And it didn't happen, except, because we were prepared. So the reason people thought shit was happening is because they were tying it back to the revelations of John, and that's shit that's really driven down our throat in the media, like Helen and Infidel were talking about. We've been primed for shit like this for a long time, but we're also primed to follow authority, right? So, and then anybody who's in the media, anybody who's in politics, anybody who makes money, in a sense, have been positioned at a place of authority. Anybody who's given a platform, we have an automatic, we need to listen to them thing happen to us, especially those like we talked about and have been talking about, and I mentioned, those who are primed for delusion-prone thinking. So I think the root of this is ultimately just a campaign, almost like a psyop that, saturates every aspect of our existence. And then there's a book that everybody in these fucking places that don't pay taxes, that's taught and driven down our throat. And everybody kind of has this like fear porn boner. People love destruction and fucking bad shit. And if they can be the one that's like knows about the bad shit and can fucking say, I told you so, and that just gives them like a social boner, right? So I think that we just got a priming issue that goes down kind of just to the root of our neurology and physiology at this point. We respond emotionally to this type of shit. It's easy to rile us up. It's easy to get people interested. It's easy to get people focused on fear porn. And from all the reasons that Infidel and all the methods and ways that Infidel and Helen were talking about. But I think the root cause is ultimately inculcation and indoctrination and the normalization of Armageddon. And if you, I'll end with this. If you look at the current stats of people who believe that there's going to be a end of the world Armageddon type event, it is way more than you would fucking think, especially in a country that's at the forefront of medical and technological innovation. Really breaks my heart. So that's about all I got to say about that.
Yeah, it's very interesting how, Helen, you were talking about basically like endorphin response, about the brain releasing these endorphins and dopamine, when we focus on things that make you feel good. But when I think about like world domination, triggering events, and also the whole thing about Armageddon, it doesn't make me feel good. I'm so
sorry. I'm so sorry. What I really want to hit on this is because I'm going to forget it.
Yeah.
Dopamine hits during the anticipatory stage. When you are anticipating something, that's when
Mhm.
dopamine hits. All this is
Mm.
fucking anticipation all the time. So I'm sorry to cut in. I just really, because you're hitting on something that's like something I was just listening to Sapolsky talk about. I'm going to drop out, but I wanted to hit that. It made me excited. It is a constant fucking anticipation. So they're constantly getting psychologically fucking stoned off of this. Sorry, I'm done. Sorry, I'll shut the fuck up.
You're perfectly fine, and actually that, because like that actually answers a question that was in my head, because I'm like, how in the world are you getting dopamine responses and also endorphins release off of something that is extremely scary, that we
Anticipation.
have, yeah, and then we have no evidence to support, well, that exists, right? But I just want to just like tell everybody that I actually did get a chance to witness the solar eclipse in my area. We got about to 94% totality in our area, in the good old Windy City, and I went out with my family to witness it, and it was really cool. Matter of fact, I believe one of the National Park Service in our area even like held an event. News is out there. They distributed the glasses so that we can actually see. And I even got my mom on video explaining the pathway of the moon, and how the moon travels in an ellipsis pattern that contributes to the phenomenon. It was really great, and that's why I just want to say I love you, mommy. You're so smart. But but regardless, when it comes to these conspiracy theories, at the end of the day, there is zero evidence to support any of these claims. None. So while some folks are busy connecting dots that don't exist, maybe it's time for a reality check. The eclipse should just be enjoyed for what it is, a beautiful natural phenomenon, not a plot for world domination. But we here at the Nonprofits want to dominate the world, so look at more of our content by clicking here.